Okay, so thanks, Ryan. And yeah, just considering you went over Warren Buffett's last Berkshire letter and recent 20F filing, I thought that I would complement the segment by doing an investor spotlight on Greg Abel, Warren Buffett's successor as Berkshire's CEO. Now, one of the things that I find most interesting about Greg is that he's from Edmonton. So in this section, I just kind of want to go over his path toward becoming CEO of one of the world's largest conglomerates, filling the shoes of one of, if not the greatest investor of all time. And I mean, I personally think he is the greatest investor of all time. I'll also just touch on some quotes from Warren on Greg, as well as Charlie on Greg. I've got one there. And then some of Greg's quotes on investing as well. So, just going over a quick timeline here. Greg is 61. He was born in Edmonton and graduated from the University of Alberta in 1984 when he was 22 years old. He first joined PwC in Calgary and then moved to San Francisco and became a CPA. In 1992, Abel joined Cal Energy as a CPA, which was a geothermal producer with assets in California and the Philippines, I believe. And they were also conveniently headquartered in Omaha, Nebraska, which is obviously close to Warren. And he became the company's CEO in 1999. And Cal Energy then made the acquisition of Mid American Energy, but would continue to operate as Mid American Energy, taking its name. Now, in 2000, Berkshire Hathaway completed the acquisition of Mid American Energy and took it private. In 2008, Greg was named the CEO of Mid American Energy, which was then renamed Berkshire Hathaway Energy in 2014, or BHE. And in 2018, he was appointed vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway's non-insurance operations. In 2021, Warren confirmed that Abel would be his future successor as CEO of Berkshire. And in 2025, Warren made a surprise announcement that Greg would be his successor as CEO at year end going into 2026. Apparently, only Warren's kids knew that he was going to be making his retirement announcement. Now, under Abel's leadership, he really turned a small geothermal business into, Berkshire Hathaway Energy, what we know it today. And he led the strategic acquisitions of Pacific Corp in 2006 and NV Energy in 2013. He also has a renewable focus, heavily invested in wind and solar, making BHE a leader in renewable energy or in the renewable energy transition. And today, BHE now contributes roughly 10% of Berkshire's total earnings. And the reason I really want to go into this is that Warren got to see Greg's execution skills as he led the energy development at Berkshire. And of course, Greg got to learn from Warren and Charlie along the way. And that's why, moving on to this next slide here, I wanted to start off with this quote. As Warren has worked with Abel for over 30 years and got to see his execution skills. He says he will make those decisions on capital allocation, I think, very much in the same framework as I would make them. We have laid out that framework now for 30 years. And it's important, of course, to find competent stewards of capital. We have a company under coverage, which has been one of our best returns over the last decade, and have an update coming out for clients soon. Now, management has recently enacted this, a new growth strategy, and there remains execution risk. But over the past decade, we have been able to see this company execute before our eyes, and we've been able to judge their business acumen along the way. So again, we will be putting out an update report on the name shortly, but it just shows, how important it is to find, good stewards of capital who have the same kind of alignment as you do. Now, he also says, Greg understands capital allocation as well as I do. That's lucky for us. I think the prospects of Berkshire will be better under Greg's management than mine. He's an outstanding manager, and he is the hardest worker in the room. And Charlie also said, Charlie Munger, he says, Greg is an absolute meritocracy man, and he's the hardest worker I've ever met. Now on to some Greg quotes. He says, we always want to be disciplined about the price we pay. Just because it's a good asset doesn't mean it's worth an infinite amount of money. And just this weekend, I was actually talking to Ryan about Zcore ZDC on the TSX Venture. I think we should probably do a segment again on it. And generally, we view this company as a good company. far better than half or, even 3/4 of what is on the Canadian exchanges. And the stock has had a tremendous run over the last few years, but the business is just insanely priced at over 40 times cash flow, over 370 times trailing earnings, and 10 times sales right now. That's a tech multiple for a capital intensive business that has basically doubled its share count over the last 3 years and levered up to maintain growth. Again, a good company, but just because it's a good asset doesn't mean it's worth an infinite amount of money. And in my opinion, it is a bit pricey right now. Maybe that's a segment we can do in the coming weeks just to go over a little bit more. He also says there's always a temptation to do something, but you have to have the discipline to wait for the right pitch. Now, sometimes the best thing to do is to sit on your hands. We can still find value in the markets. They are generally pricey right now. But when the opportunity arises, we will recommend a business. There's a great company that services the oil and gas sector right now, but we just want a larger margin of safety on this business, a better valuation before we want to make a recommendation to our clients. And having that discipline to wait for the right opportunity is a good way to preserve capital and get those asymmetric investment opportunities to the upside rather than the downside. He says cash is very important to us, and retaining that strong cash position gives us the flexibility to move quickly when the right opportunities arise. And this is probably one of my favorite quotes. Warren talks about the curiosity being important as you go through things. That would be my style, to have questions and comments around their business, their frameworks. And, I have a quote that has actually been written on my whiteboard behind me for the last seven years. You can't see it because it's up there. But it says, curiosity is greater than a basic degree. And while I do think that obviously a degree is important for a framework of investing, the person who is curious enough to thoroughly understand an investment opportunity has an edge, and those who are not curious will not put in the work. I also think that a lot of the times when we get into these management interviews with companies, sometimes the simplest questions are the best questions of just really understanding, the how a business works. What are the key performance indicators? So, looking ahead, as the designated CEO, Abel faces the monumental task of succeeding a legend. His challenges, of course, include maintaining the unique decentralized culture that attracts business owners, navigating the energy transition with BHE's vast utility portfolio, and of course, just looking forward, investors do view him as a stabilizer who will preserve the company's moat and culture, of course. As of May 2025, Greg Abel currently owns $175 million in Berkshire Hathaway stock. And last but not least, of course, Ryan's favorite thing, an Oilers fan is taking his favorite investor's job.
Gross. I hate him already.
Yeah, I thought you'd like that one.
Yeah,
to be honest, I was looking online to see if he's actually an Oilers fan. I couldn't see anything. We're not sure. Concrete.
I don't think he'd be that stupid. Let's be honest. No. I mean, no. Honestly, he'd be smarter to pick the Oilers than the Canucks. So I didn't pick him. I was born here. Can't help it. Yes. All right. No, it's a great summary, and I mean, proof will be in the pudding. We'll revisit 10 years from now, 15 years from now, but it does seem to be a reasonable choice, and I'm sure Warren did pick well. But you do wonder, even when Warren steps away or when he eventually passes, is there a reaction in the stock? Because, he's an absolute legend, and because of the results he's delivered over the long term. So interesting. It will be when, he's 95, so it's amazing. He's been at the helm for that long. It's great.